Hello class, we're going to take a look at the business judgment rule. This is chapter 40, part 3, and I want to apologize about part 2. I believe I abruptly cut it off, realizing that I had originally put a problem from the textbook into my presentation. However, then I also did the MindTap explanation for the case problem analysis, and it parallels the same problem. So that's why problem 40-2 is not included in the previous video. Apologize. I want to continue though with the business judgment rule here in part 3. All right, the business judgment rule follows up on the duty of care that is owed by directors and officers to the corporation, and it just articulates even more clearly, all right, the protection that directors and officers will have. So directors and officers will not be personally liable for any action they take on behalf of the corporation, provided they, 1, act in good faith, they are informed, and they're making a rational decision in the best interest of the corporation with the care that an ordinarily prudent person in a similar position would have taken in similar circumstances. There are a couple of cases that will illustrate for us the application of the business judgment rule. So the first case is case 40.1. It's called Oliveira, and I'm going to take us out there to your textbook. In this case, there is no violation of the business judgment rule. Let me close out and switch screens. All right, here's the Oliveira case. And the facts of this case are as follows. Let me get my notes over here. All right. So what happened here is the board of directors, they properly offered an employee share program. One of the shareholders challenged that decision by the board, but the court found that there was a proper basis for the decision. All right. The court went to great lengths here to take a look at the director who was involved in the decision. Let me scroll down a bit. All right, and here's the description. All right, the shareholders, here are the plaintiffs, the Oliveiras. They assert that Writings' investigation, Writings is the director, of the shareholders' demand was rife with improper procedure. All right, the shareholders argue that Writings, who was the person asked to take a look at the challenge by the Oliveiras, that Writings lacked sufficient corporate experience to make a proper recommendation, that Writings was not sufficiently disinterested, and the court said those contentions were baseless. Writings himself has 40 years of business experience, including service on the boards of several public companies, putting him in a position to be able to examine the decision-making of the board. And Writings is highly respected and experienced, and he had experienced counsel to help him and to conduct the interviews. So the fact that the shareholders bring the action does not necessarily mean that there's any problem with the board's decision, and the business judgment rule here would apply. The decision was made using the proper process, and the board was diligent in its exercise of its authority. All right, I want to take a look at another case, though, which gives us an opposite result. If you just scroll down a bit in your text or just look down the page a little bit more. Sorry, I had to move it. Here it goes. This is the case in point 40.3. Whoops, excuse me. Let me just see if I can scroll down a little bit more. Get as much of the case on the screen as I can. All right, let me just read it for you. The board of directors of the Shugok Alaska Corporation voted to remove Sherry Beretta as the chair and install Robert Heinrichs. During his term, Heinrichs acted without board approval, made decisions with only his supporters present, retaliated against directors who challenged his decisions, and ignored board rules for conducting meetings. He refused to comply with bylaws that required a special shareholders meeting in response to a shareholder petition and personally mistreated directors, shareholders, and employees. After 6 months, the board voted to reinstall Beretta. All right, CAC, which is the corporation, filed a suit. Let me scroll up a little bit here for you. In court against Heinrichs, alleging a breach of fiduciary duty. A jury found Heinrichs was liable, and the court barred him from serving on the CAC board for 5 years. The appellate court affirmed it. So the court, this little excerpt here, it just concludes with this. Given the nature and seriousness of Heinrichs' misconduct, the business judgment rule did not protect him. All right, so you got kind of two contrasting cases. Pretty clearly can show you the difference between the director's conduct and how the business judgment rule would apply. All right, so that kind of brings us to the end of this part 3, and we're going to move in our next section and take a look at shareholders, what their role is in the corporation.